Thank you very much for joining me here today, Roger. I'm very intrigued to hear what you've got to say now that we have decided to leave the EU. How do you think our economy will be affected by that decision?
Well, it's a big question, and people like me have been doing a lot of thinking about it. And my thoughts are that the way the economy is going to be influenced depends on the time period. My view, contrary to a lot of people, is in the short run we'll see very little change.
Okay.
Until that letter is written saying we're going to leave, then we're still a member, we're still trading, we're still getting the income stream to the regions from Brussels. So in that sense, nothing has changed. There might be a little bit of a drop in consumer confidence, but I think that's going to come back in autumn, September. I think the risk is longer term, and it's longer term because sterling's weakness always drives inflation with a lag of about 9 months to a year. And with inflation rising, then the Bank of England has no choice but to raise interest rates. And that's probably 2 years away. But when that happens, I think that's when we're going to see the significant slowdown. And it may be exaggerated by all sorts of bad news out of Brussels as to how the negotiation's going.
Okay.
So short run, I think we're okay. Medium term, I think it's going to slow down. Longer term, 5 years from now, it depends entirely on the deal. Mm. But given the team that the Prime Minister's put together, I suspect that we will be able to agree a lot of access to the market and be able to choose who we have as workers in this country. So some sort of point system on immigration. Mm. I suspect that will happen in the end. But the honest truth is, at this stage, we don't know.
Yeah. I read in The Economist this morning that they think a recession could potentially be looming later this year. So are you saying that that's potentially too soon?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I would look for a looming recession 18 months from now.
Okay. So you think there will be?
Difficult to say. It all depends on by how much the pound drops and by how much inflation rises. That's
the key.
That's the key.
Okay. And at Lettings Live, many people would have heard you. I think you indicated that house prices potentially could fall if we leave the EU.
Yeah.
Do you stand by that still now?
It depends where you are in the UK. I think house prices central London have already fallen. But because sterling, when we were at Lettings Live, sterling was at 150 and it's now 130. Mm. So with a 10% fall in top-end prices and a 12% drop in the exchange rate, top-end looks rather cheap if you're holding dollars. Mm. So I expect a bit of a recovery there. Around the country as a whole, at the moment, I mean, we don't know, we should know whether the Bank of England has lowered interest rates.
No, they stayed the same.
I'm glad they have, because I was with people this morning and I said they definitely wouldn't drop the rate.
Oh, good.
That's good. My credibility is still intact.
Yes, proof.
Yeah, so around the country, I think the rate of increase we've been seeing, which is nearly 8% year on year at the beginning of this year, it's going to drop to around 2-3% growth a year now.
Okay.
I think. However, there could be a drop in house prices if interest rates rise faster than expected in 2-3 years' time. Again, that all depends on by how much inflation moves thanks to the weakness of the pound.
Right.
So the key indicator is sterling.
Okay. We've had news now that Theresa May is our Prime Minister. What are your thoughts on that decision?
Well, I've actually shared a platform with Theresa May just before the crash of 2008. We were together on Radio Berkshire, and she was MP for Maidenhead, still is. And I was very miserable about the outlook for house prices, and I can remember sternly telling me that she thought I was talking nonsense. And after that interview, the BBC chap pulled me aside. He said, "Look, I'm thinking of buying a house in Reading. Should I wait a bit?" And I said, "Yes, give it a couple of years, and you'll get it for 10% less." Yeah. And I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
So what do I think? I think good. I think good.
Yeah.
And I'm very pleased she's put together a Brexit team. So, you know, if it all goes wrong, then she can tell the backbenchers, say, well, you know, I've got the Brexiteers on the job and they screwed it up. Don't blame me. She's clever, that. She's clever. She's a Mrs. Thatcher in terms of her steeliness and determination.
Okay.
But she's also a woman in her ability to see things that blokes don't see. So she's smart.
And Boris Johnson, what are your thoughts on his position?
Well, because Boris made such an ass of himself in the Brexit period, he lost a lot of points with me. However, as Foreign Secretary, he does have the ability to charm people. He does have his 3 languages, which is good. And I suspect he will rise to the challenge.
Right.
There will be the odd gaffe, I'm sure. But he's got a big job as the Minister for Brexit has, David Davis. You know, those 2 guys have got, you know, I think Boris will be working harder than he's ever worked in his entire life.
Good.
And I expect him to.
Yeah. And we touched on the crash briefly in 2008. Do you think we will be heading to anything near that level of recession?
No. And the reason why is that in 2008, British banks were very highly leveraged. They couldn't handle any real downturn in asset prices or defaults. This time around, they've got loads of capital. And they all passed their stress test just 6 months ago. And that stress test assumed 4% reduction in GDP and a 20% reduction in house prices. And they all passed. So, much stronger position now.
Okay.
Not a big crash like last time.
No.
Absolutely not.
Do you think that we will ever enter that kind of boom and bust cycle again?
The cycle will never go away. Will there be another cycle like the one of 2008? Yes, there will, but it will be another generation ahead.
Right.
Because, of course, we seem to get those big cycles every 2 generations. It's just because people don't read the history books.
Right. And is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have asked you?
Well, maybe you should have asked me, and what do people do running their business with all this noise going on in the press and uncertainty? And what I would say very firmly is, if you're a small business, then your market share is likely to be that small that the big economy won't hurt you too much.
Okay.
If you're a small business and you're absolutely clear on what makes you distinctive and compelling, you'll trade through whatever happens.
Okay.
1 year might not be so good as the next year, but you're still going to trade through it.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much, Roger.
Pleasure.